Hi everyone, this is Miss Smith. Let's talk about the resume and the cover letter, which is what this video will cover. And so both of these documents are really important in the hiring process. Your resume probably is the most important. Typically, a prospective employer will ask the job seeker to produce a resume. It may be during the application process or it may come later. It may come before the application process. But whenever you may be asked to produce a resume, you want to make sure that you have a very strong, solid resume that will market you as a professional and that will not take anything away from your credibility. Okay? And so preparing a resume then becomes really important. So first let's talk about what is a resume? Now we all probably know what a resume is, but just in case you actually don't know, maybe you've heard the term used a lot, but you don't exactly know what it is or what its purpose is, let's kind of unpack that for a second. And so the purpose of a resume is for you to create a document and in this document market yourself. And you want to indicate in that document that you have the skills and qualification and professional preparation that will prepare you for the job that you are seeking. Okay? I'll say that again. The goal of the resume is for you to create a document that markets you and that demonstrates that you are professional and prepared and that you are skilled for the job that you are seeking. Okay, so your resume is a marketing tool. Another goal, probably one of the larger goals of the resume, is to help you land a job interview. And so a well done resume will ideally achieve that for you. It will help you land a job interview. Okay? And so that's what we mean when we say resume. And so when we think about preparing a resume, we want to think through it, right? It's a very important document, a very weighty document, and you don't want to just slap something together and hope for the best. You want to make sure that your resume is something that you have looked over, that you've revised, that you've edited, that you've proofread, maybe that you've gotten other people to look over for you, because this is not the place to make careless errors. In fact, you don't want to make any errors on your resume because even the slightest error will diminish your credibility. Okay, so it's really important that you get all of your information correct, that you get your grammar correct, and that you are appropriately marketing yourself. And so what employers like to see in a resume, they want you to be honest and truthful about your qualifications. Okay, they don't want you to distort or exaggerate or embellish or otherwise falsify information about yourself or your skills or your experience or your education. Those things tend to catch up with you. So if you've been dishonest on a resume or in any part of that hiring packet, okay, and your employer finds out, even if they've already hired you, they may fire you. Okay, and so you want to be honest. Your resume should be attractive. It should look good. It should look like something someone wants to read. Remember, your documents can reflect on you. In that triangle, remember we talked about the professional communication triangle, you're the informed writer and you have a practical purpose and you're writing to an audience or you're communicating to an audience with specific and diverse needs as well. Okay, and so you want to make sure that you as the informed writer recognize that for a resume, your audience will expect you to create a document that looks good and a document that is carefully organized, a document that is logical and easy to follow and consistent. You don't want to have in your resume major headings or subheadings that look completely different. You want to be consistent in how you present information. You want it to be a well-structured, well-defined document. Now, for our resume assignment, we're going to use something called College Central Network. College Central Network is free to students at OC Tech, and it is a great service. It contains a resume builder, and that's the feature we're going to use in College Central Network, the resume builder feature. And in that resume builder, it's going to take the guesswork out of structuring your resume. It's going to make it so much easier for you because all you have to do is input information and it provides the entire structure for you. Okay, so it takes a lot of guesswork out of that organization, which is a really good thing. Employers expect you to be concise. They want you to make sure that you get to the point. They want you to understand that they need for you to write in such a way that you are meeting their needs. They have put forth a job description and they want you to write in such a way where you are showing them concisely that yes, I am qualified and I should be considered for this job position. Okay, it's important also, just to touch on a few more of these, that you are accurate with your spelling and your grammar, your dates, your names, titles, all of that needs to be accurate. You may have to go back and contact human resources offices for previous jobs you've had just to make sure that the information that you think you know is accurate. Okay, and so you should make sure that your resume is current as well. It needs to be up to date and documented. Okay, it needs to be relevant as well, and that's kind of what I was talking about before. You want to make sure that the information on your resume is appropriate for the job description that you are seeking. Okay, you want to make sure that your resume is relevant. You don't want to overreach to a position that you are not qualified for. Chances are you will not even get any kind of callback, or maybe your application and your resume will be tossed in the trash, and it will be a waste of that prospective employer's time. And so you want to make sure that whatever you submit is relevant. Okay? And so it's important to note that there's a process of writing your resume that the book talks about, but I want to emphasize the parts of the resume. Okay? And so there are very few universally accepted parts of the resume. So the resume can vary. Different people will use different subheadings, will approach their resumes in different ways. But if there's anything that is consistent, it is the contact information. That contact information is really important. And it's at the very top of your resume. It includes your full name. You don't want to use a nickname. It includes your full address and your zip code, your telephone number, and an email address. Now let me pause right there, okay? Sometimes a prospective employer can take a very long time in getting through the hiring process. Okay, maybe you've been there before. Maybe you've applied for a job and it's been about 2, maybe 3 months later before you even heard back for an interview. Sometimes the process goes very slowly. Usually the prospective employer is trying to hire for a position on top of other duties that they still have to meet day by day. Okay, so sometimes that job search is kind of pushed to the back burner. But it's important that you do not forget that you have applied for a job. Okay, and so going back to telephone number, you don't want to answer the phone like you are mad at the world, and you don't want to sound like you are half awake or disinterested or just otherwise disgusted. Okay? You want to make sure that you remember that you've applied for a job and you very well could get a call for an interview. And you want to sound like a human being who is coherent. Okay? You want to make sure that you answer the phone with some sense of professionalism. You definitely want to make sure that you take away, take off, remove any ringbacks that would, with songs that would make you seem unprofessional, and any outgoing messages that would make you seem unprofessional. Okay? And the same is true with your email address. The handle of your email address should not be anything that is unprofessional. Okay? So Sweet Potato 29 isn't going to be a good email address to use at the top of your resume. But you would be surprised how often that happens. And it discredits the individual as a professional, and it diminishes the individual's credibility. And so for your email address, you want to make sure that you are using some variation of your first and last name as that handle. So you may need to create a brand new email address for job seeking purposes. okay, for job search purposes, and you may want to use that email address for those purposes. And so, for example, a variation of my name for my email address might be Denisha.Smith or dsmith1, okay, or Smith Denisha, 25, or whatever the case might be. You want to use some variation of your first and last name. That's usually a safe bet for your email address when you're using it for professional purposes. Okay, and so contact information is going to be a part of every part of the resume. Another part of the resume that tends to be standard, not necessarily in all cases nowadays, but it does tend to be standard, is the career objective. And in the career objective, you are talking about what it is you're looking for in the job and the ways in which you're qualified to hold it. Okay, and so you pretty much are providing a statement, one or two sentences, that explains who you are as a professional and that explains what it is you're looking for in a company, okay, or how you're qualified for the position that you're after. And so here's what I want you to know with the career objective. You have to do a job search as a part of your jobs packet for this assignment. Okay, and so you should then, as a result of that job search, have a job title that you're going to specifically focus on for your jobs packet. Okay, so you have a job that you found, that job has a job title, you're going to create a resume and a cover letter that responds to the qualifications listed in that job posting, right, in that job description. So what I want you to do, I want you to include the actual job title as it is listed in the job posting. I want you to include that in your career objective. And in doing this, you're going to customize your resume to that specific job. Okay, so I'll say that again. If you include a career objective section, which you should, you need to have a career objective statement. But I want you to make sure that you emphasize, customize that career objective statement by making sure that you include the name of that job posting in your statement, thereby, like I just said, customizing your resume for that specific job. So you can include the name of the job duty and the name of the company. Okay, you could include both things in that career objective statement. And that is really important because, like I said in the last video, your prospective employer wants to believe that you want to work at that company specifically. You may be casting a wide net and seeking jobs at various different companies, but that prospective employer wants to know that they will be getting an employee who wants specifically to work there. And when you take the time to customize your resume like that, that reinforces that. Okay? And so let me know if you have questions about that. The book gives us some examples of unfocused versus focused career statements. Again, include the job posting title, the job title, and the name of the company in that career objective statement. Credentials. Now, the book talks about, under the credentials section, your education and your experience. You definitely want to make sure that you emphasize the education that you've received if it is relevant to the job that you're going for. Okay, even if it's not directly relevant, you want to indicate that you have been educated in some field and that your education, how it affects you, what you've learned, what you've gained from it. Okay, and you don't want to include high school. You do not want to include high school. Now that you have college experience, you want to only go as far back as your college experience. With your experience, in this way that the book is talking about experience, they're talking about your job history or your work history, okay? And it's important to list your work history in what we call reverse chronological order. You want to start with your current job or your most recent job, and then you want to list everything before that, okay, in order. And so you want to start where you are, and then you want to work your way backward. The same is true with education, okay? You want to start with your current or most recent educational pursuit, and then you want to work your way backward, Okay, and so it's important that especially with experience, that you provide a short description, 1 or 2 lines of your duties and of your achievements. It's not enough for you to just put in wording from the actual job description for the job that you had. You want to kind of go beyond that, and you want to emphasize your responsibilities. You want to emphasize the type of work that you performed, especially if it's going to be relevant for the position that you are seeking. Okay, so that's really useful information. Related skills and achievement. If you speak a second or a third language, you should definitely indicate that. That's definitely a marketable skill. Certificates or licenses that you hold, that's really important, especially if the job posting asks for it. Now, if the job posting asks for you to have a certain certificate or license and you're in the process of getting it, you could probably still apply for that job, right? Because you're in the process of obtaining that certificate or license. However, if you do not have the certificate or license and they indicate that they want you to, then that's probably a job you should not apply for. Memberships in professional organizations are really important as well, and that provides you with another opportunity for networking, which is very important. Okay, like we talked about in the last video, very important to network and to get your name out there and to meet other people and to make those connections, those professional connections that could yield great opportunities for you. Computer skills, of course, that's important. You want to emphasize if you have computer skills, and honors and awards. You want to say if you've been awarded for something, if you've received an honor for something. Now, the very last section of your resume should be the references section. Okay? The very last section of your resume should be your references section. And so you want to make sure you have that section titled references. In that section, I want you to include the following statement. Okay? Resumes are available upon request. Okay? Again, at the very end of your resume, you want to have a section titled references, and you want to include the following statement. References are available upon request. It used to be the case where it was acceptable to list the name and contact information of individuals, 3 to 5 maybe, individuals who have already agreed to act as references for you. Okay? That has since changed. And so it is now acceptable for you just to put that statement under the references section. If a prospective employer is interested in you and interested in learning more about you as a possible job candidate, then he or she will contact you as a part of that hiring process and will ask you later in that process probably to produce your references so that they can contact your references. Here's the thing, okay? You never want to put someone down as a reference without asking their permission. You want to make sure the individual you have in mind to be a reference is willing to be a reference for you, and that he or she will provide an enthusiastic reference for you. Someone who will speak well of you and who will be able to speak with a sense of confidence and knowledge and intelligence about your skills and your work ethic, all of those things, okay? And so you want to make sure that you ask for permission first. You never want to give a prospective employer someone's name and contact information. They contact that individual, and then the individual has no idea that you've given them their name. That will diminish your credibility very quickly, and it may offend the person that you're seeking the reference from. Okay, so you definitely do not want to do that. So that's really, really important. And so organizing your resume, you can organize your resume chronologically or by function or skill area. Okay. And so when a resume is organized chronologically, essentially, you are emphasizing that you have had consistent and or relevant work experience. Okay. Either you have steadily held a job if you've changed job, you've kind of moved from one to the next one with very little gaps in between. You want to emphasize your work history, and you want to emphasize perhaps that you have consistent experience, paid work experience in your field. You want to use that chronological resume. This is a traditional way to organize a resume, and it is one that employers accept. And so it's one that is often used. Okay? In a chronological resume, your education and your experience definitely will take center stage on the page. Okay? It's usually going to be high in terms of the list of sections that you include on your resume, and you want to emphasize your experience, your work experience. You want to emphasize your education in this chronological resume. Okay? However, the other option for organizing your resume is by function or skill area. So maybe you don't have consistent work experience. Maybe you've never had a job. Maybe you're in school now so that you can get a job. And you want to make sure that you're not setting yourself up to not market yourself correctly because you're using the wrong type of organization. So you want to use a function or skill area if you have had gaps in your employment. Maybe you've taken time off to be at home with your family, or maybe you've taken time away from the workforce to go back to school full time. Regardless of what the case might be, maybe you've never been employed, you want to emphasize your skills instead of your work history. Okay? And so what you want to do is organize your skills into 2 to 4 key areas. And the book gives some examples of some of those headings that you can use, or some of those areas that you can create. And so you want to do that, and then you want to make sure that you put down relevant experience that you've had under each of those skill areas. Now, assuming that you don't have paid experience, or maybe it's been a long time since you were in the workforce, it's important to note that experience does not necessarily have to be paid experience. Okay? Some people will distinguish between experience and work history. Okay? Work history perhaps being paid experience, and then experience just being, generalized. Maybe I was not paid to do this, but these are some of the skills that I learned from some of the experiences that I've had. And so there's an example. I believe it's on page 185 of the textbook that you can look at. And that is an example of a well done resume that focuses on a skill area. Okay, and let me see if it's actually further down. I don't see it here. Let's see really quickly if it's somewhere else. Okay, I don't see it here, so I won't waste time looking for it. But it is on page 185 in the textbook, and it's a great example of a skills resume. With the skills resume, you're going to emphasize your skills prominently. So instead of your resume's education or experience taking center stage, your skills will be prominently featured on the page. Okay? And so hopefully that is helpful. Just kind of going over again some of the things from the readings, just adding a little bit more context to some things. And let's kind of go back now and talk about the letter of application, or the cover letter. Okay? And so, like I said in the beginning, your resume is an important document. Your cover letter is also a very important document. So here's what you need to know about cover letters. Your cover letter is essentially the very first conversation that you're going to have with your prospective employer. Okay? It's a conversation you're having on paper, but it is essentially the first conversation you're going to have with your prospective employer. And so you want to make sure that your resume is personable, professional, and persuasive, what the book calls the 3 Ps. And you want to make sure that you're presenting yourself in such a manner that makes you stand out as a strong candidate for the position. Okay, and so if we think in terms of the word persuasive, remember when we did the sales letters, we talked about persuasion and rhetoric. We can think about this in terms of one of those rhetorical appeals as ethos, right? You want your credibility, your character, your ethos to take center stage in something like a cover letter or a letter of application. You want to show that you are credible, meaning that you are qualified for the job, you have the relevant experience, and you want to show that you are someone who has the necessary character to be someone that someone would want to hire, that you're a team player, that you're a hard worker, that you're knowledgeable, whatever the case might be. You want to show those things and emphasize that in your letter of application. Okay? And so the book talks about how letters of application and resumes differ. Of course, you can go back and take a look at that. I just wanted to point out, and maybe I have passed it, so I'll go back. I wanted to point out the different sections of it and how we can organize it, okay? And so we want to think of the cover letter as an actual letter, right? So we've already talked about letters and the proper way to format letters. And so it becomes important then for you to make sure that you're writing a full letter and that you have the letter outlined according to proper letter format. It also becomes really important then the content of your letter. I want you to think about this letter in terms of ABC format. In that abstract paragraph, you're opening up this conversation with this prospective employer. It's really important that you begin on a good note, okay? It's really important that you show interest in the position, that you name the job position, and that you mention the company as well. Again, customizing your document for that specific job, okay? And that you provide an abstract, right? In that abstract paragraph, kind of a generalized overview of who you are, why you should be considered. Now, you cannot expect the prospective employer to read through your entire letter. There may be one job opening, but there may be 57 different applicants for it. And so at some point there's a weeding out of candidates to see who's most qualified. So in that abstract paragraph, you want to make sure that you emphasize those key points, those things that the prospective employer chose to emphasize in that job description. You want to emphasize that you are qualified. If they're looking for someone with at least 1 year experience and you have 3 years of experience, you want to mention that in that abstract paragraph. Okay? If they're looking for someone with a certain license and you have that license, then you want to make sure that you mention that. You want to make sure that they don't toss you away. You want to make sure that you get another look, that they continue to read through your cover letter and hopefully learn more about you and consider you as a strong candidate for the position that you're going after. Okay? In that body paragraph, you want to supply all the details. You want to talk about your experience and your education. You want to talk about relevant skills that you've earned, that you've gained. And you want to make sure it's clear and quantifiable, the accomplishments that you've made. So you don't want to just say that I was the #1 sales holder at my company. You want to say something more along the lines of, I increased sales by 35% in a 9-month time period, right? Something that's more quantifiable, something that contains a little bit more measurable, type of numbers and ways that you can kind of gauge your success and your accomplishment there. And so in that body paragraph, you want to be detailed. In the conclusion paragraph, you want to pretty much get in and out of that conclusion. And in the conclusion, you want to ask for an interview, and you want to essentially say it this way. You want to say that I am available to interview for this position. And you definitely want to leave your contact information. I would leave a phone number and an email address. Now, perhaps you're using a similar heading that you used for your resume as a part of your cover letter. that's fine. But you still want to put that contact information in the conclusion paragraph. And in that case, it would be your phone number and or your email address if you are telling them that you are available to interview. Okay, and I want you to tell them that you are available to interview for this position as a part of that conclusion paragraph. And so you also want to thank the prospective employer for their time and their consideration. You want to pretty much keep it simple. Okay, you want to keep it simple. And so I will show you an example in this week's content of a job posting and a cover letter that I created that tries to respond to that job posting so that you see that example. Okay, and so all of that becomes really important with the cover letter. You want to make sure that you remember that you're having your first conversation, even though it's on paper, you're having your first conversation with your prospective employer, and that you want to make sure that you are responding to what the job is asking for, that you're showing the prospective employer in that abstract paragraph that you deserve a second look, right? That you are a serious candidate and that you should be considered for the job. Okay? You want to follow ABC format and you want to follow all of the tenets of having a complete letter. And so again, in this video, I'm just touching base on several things in the chapter as it pertains to resumes and letters of application or cover letters. Hopefully this information has been helpful, but if you have questions, let me know. It is hard to start off with a blank screen and have to create a cover letter. So make sure you reference some of the resources that I've given you, the examples that I've given you, and your book to help you pull together a solid cover letter, and make sure that you're using College Central Network to help you create a strong resume. Okay? But again, if you have questions along the way, please let me know. Have a great one.